to, hear the rest of the story, if you will, or the other side of the story. And like I say, the key thing here in my mind is the First Amendment says, we all have a right to talk. We all have a right to be able to tell our side of the story. And I just have to say, this last week, I've got a bit of, I'll just be blunt, hate mail because of I didn't stop things, I didn't do things or whatever. I don't censor. Twitter censors, Facebook censors. That's what's got us into the problem that we are right now, is we have to be able to listen to each other. I don't know everything. Ask my kids. They know I don't know everything, okay? But I do know that collectively we do. But for me to understand, I need to listen to you. I need to listen to her. I need to understand it all. And that's what we're all about here, is trying to get the rest of the story. If any of you used to listen to Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, it was always pretty good, because Paul Harvey would say something and tell a story, and then he'd tell the rest of the story. And the rest of the story changed your perception of what he started on. And so I'm really adamant about us getting together and being able to share our differences and talk about it and get through these things. Last week I said that I'd give time for responses or rebuttals. And so far this week, at least, the only people that I've had comment or want to have a chance to say something was the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, and Nick Contos, their chairman, is going to speak tonight. The other one is Wayne Hoffman of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. They couldn't make it tonight, and actually I'm sort of glad that they didn't, because I think Nick needs to have his time. But they'll be here November 30th, so 2 weeks from tonight. So everybody's invited to come to that. Again, the purpose of tonight is communication. We all have, I believe, most of the people in this room have the same overarching agenda. Save our country, work, being concerned about things, and we need to come together from that. We can't let the little 10 to 20% that we don't agree on destroy us. And so let's keep that in mind. And tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn the whole night over to Nick. And he's going to have the floor. He's going to be able to run this meeting how he pleases. And so we'll do that at the end when he gets done and he's tired of talking and wants to turn it back over to me, then he can do that. But for now, tonight is Nick's night. And it's for whatever he wants us to say. And again, remember, we all have the right to tell our side of the story. So with that, let's everybody give Nick a big hand if we could, please.
Thank you, Doug. Can I be tired of talking already? My name is Nick Contos, like Doug said there. I'm a volunteer for the Republican Party in Bonneville County. And this year I was elected as the chairman of the Central Committee. Right about now, as I'm looking at the crowd and the camera, I'm thinking, could I decline that nomination still, or is that ship sailed? Truthfully, though, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Republican Party in Bonneville County. I'm grateful for Stand Up for Idaho, for hosting this forum. They do good work here, and the opportunity for our community to talk and learn from one another is a great thing. I'm grateful also for our party volunteers for having put trust in me to be able to speak on their behalf tonight and to talk a little bit about the Republican Party. You'll forgive me, I hope. I'm not a professional politician or great public speaker. I may stumble over my words a little bit, but I will speak from the heart. I believe what I say, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm actually a construction worker. I work in the construction industry, and I came straight from work today. Apologize. I probably still am tracking a little mud in. We've been trying to pave in in the frozen tundra of Pocatello right now. When I'm not dealing with the supply chain, that is. I am a family man. I have 4 kids. I live here in Idaho Falls. My wife couldn't come tonight because we have a young baby at home that needs her. I do have my son here, John. If you'd stand up. John's my sidekick sometimes at political events. He likes to tag along. I'm not sure if it's because he plays video games or colors, but he tags along with me sometimes. I volunteer for the Republican Party, not for the pay. There is none. Not for the prestige or government power or the fame. Many of you probably didn't know my name before tonight. I volunteer for the Republican Party because of John and my other kids. I believe it's important, the world that we deliver to them, and I believe that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do everything I could to deliver him the freedom that he deserves. I'm frankly terrified sometimes when you turn on the news and you see the direction that our country is going, whether it's inflation or creeping socialism or declines in morality or wars, so many things. And, every member of the Bonneville County Republican Party is a volunteer like me. And the organization is truly a bunch of volunteers. So enough about me. I'll jump right in here a little bit. I'm here to talk about the Republican Party. Over the last year or so, there's been a lot of hearsay or misconceptions, I think, or speculation about the Republican Party in our county. And as someone who has volunteered and been involved in the party, I'm happy to offer maybe a firsthand perspective or accounting. I'm not here to argue with anyone tonight, but I was personally involved in almost everything every activity that the Bonneville County Republican Party has done recently. And so I can answer questions and hopefully clarify some things straight from the source. Last May, on a Thursday like this, is during the workday, several of the volunteers for the Republican Party started getting calls from the media asking them about a lawsuit. We were preparing for a meeting much like this, but it was our monthly meeting. During that meeting, the volunteers in the committee, we were served this lawsuit, about 300 pages. That was a new one for me. And truthfully, it was unexpected. Caught us off guard, was a little bit surprising. There were 10 volunteers that were named in the lawsuit, as well as the entire Bonneville County Central Committee. This group has heard in the past how when your name shows up in the newspaper, that can be a little bit disconcerting or intense and stressful, I suppose. When you feel like you're being targeted because you've been involved and exercised your right to be involved in the world of politics, that's a little bit shocking sometimes. It's to worry that it might hurt your career or your reputation is a challenge. That's a challenge of life. I think of myself as a little guy, I guess, in the world of politics. And but the next morning, my name was in the AP News. It was in the national U.S. News. It was in the Post Register, the Idaho Statesman, Idaho State Journal, Idaho Press, all the Idaho publications. I was actually called within a few days by the Tokyo newspaper. Yes, that one in Japan. They actually came out with an interpreter to interview me about the goings on of the Republican Party. I was also interviewed by the Epic Times. So quite a whirlwind there. the day after the lawsuit was filed, I had to take time off work because there was a team of powerful lawyers that had filed an emergency injunction, and they were able to convince a judge that for a preliminary injunction, which is not a gag order, but prohibited some of the volunteers from continuing to talk about some of the political goings on. I had friends that were asking me about what was going on, and I was a little nervous. What can I say? The election, the primary election, was 4 days after that. After that election, the lawsuit stayed in place. So I asked advice from some legal people, and generally was told that I was under no personal liability or concerns there. But in the legal world, there's always that chance. One person with a legal background told me, you need to be careful. And I said, well, do I need to worry about losing my house? What are we doing here? I called someone who was connected with the other side of the lawsuit, and they didn't want to talk to me. Told me that they had paid lots of money themselves in previous lawsuits. And so needless to say, the volunteers for Bonneville County were under a little bit of pressure last May. And to be honest, it would have been easy for volunteers in such a situation to just walk away. Some did, and I don't blame them. But society doesn't work well if good people walk away from what they believe when there's pressure, when there's questions raised. Most of those named on the lawsuit, or many of those, are in attendance. I'd ask a few of them to stand if they would. I know I've got a couple here that were named on that lawsuit. We've got Andrew Russell here. Andrew is, I think, the youngest volunteer in the Bonneville County Republican Party. He's 24 or 25? 26, I'm sorry, underestimating. Andrew is our current youth committeeman, and he is one of the hardest workers we have. Everything that has come up recently, Andrew has jumped in both feet and dedicated himself completely to helping out and working. He calls me late at night as we're working on campaigns or different things, and always volunteers to help out. He has some tremendous talents and has been able to share those. Then we have Barbara Miller here. Barbara is the treasurer of the Bonneville County Republican Party. Barbara believes passionately in freedom. Once she starts talking about it, she doesn't stop. She is a great example as well. She recently put herself out there and ran for public office in something totally new, but set a great example for, I think, our whole community. We have Diane Jensen here. Diane is the most organized and probably the smartest of all of the volunteers we have in the Bonneville County Republican Party. She has personally done a ton of work for the party. She's the one that ran the silent auction for the last 4 years running now, which, if you've ever been to one of our Lincoln days, you would understand is a huge undertaking. We have Anthony Torino here. Anthony is our current first vice chairman. Anthony showed up, in my memory, I think it was 8 years ago, to a Republican Party meeting, and nobody knew him. And he showed up fresh from New York City, and he had a thick New York accent, and he got up and he said, "I'm so grateful to be amongst conservatives. I was in a wasteland of New York where there are none." He gives such a rousing speech that the committee elected him to be one of our delegates to the state convention. And he went and served, and he's never looked back. Anthony does a ton of great work for the party. These are just a few, but I appreciate them. These are a couple examples of some of the good people that volunteer in the Republican Party. On that note, before I jump into more details, I want to jump back briefly, I suppose, and talk about one of my favorite questions, I guess. What is the Republican Party? That's a question that I get a lot of different answers to as I talk to people and work in the party. The Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, or BCRCC, it's a mouthful, is the official Republican Party in Bonneville County. It is the organization, the official organization of Bonneville County. The committee is made up of precinct officers. Now, Bonneville County has 51 precincts. Each precinct elects one volunteer to serve as the precinct officer for on the committee. And that committee is made up of all those precinct officers that work together to form really the basis, the essence of the Republican Party. Every county in Idaho has a central committee that is made up of precinct officers, and that is the Republican Party. Everything else within the Republican Party structure and organization is built on that grassroots foundation. Whether you talk about the region organization or the state or the coordination that goes on there, all the way up to the chairman of the National Republican Committee, every single member or position in the Republican Party is based on the local precinct officers and is elected by those, either directly or indirectly. The Bonneville County Republican Party is not a club. It's not a small group or a tiny committee or a secret cabal. In fact, best I can tell, the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee is the largest elected body in our county. And by extension, the largest in the Eastern Idaho. We have, I think, over 130 active volunteers. We have 46 precinct officers, 30 assistant precinct officers, 9 on the executive committee. We had 47 delegates at the convention, and another at least a couple dozen volunteers that volunteer on one of our many subcommittees. Each of those people is a volunteer. And collectively, the Republican Party does tons and tons of work. I am so proud of the Bonneville County Republican Party for the work that they do and the dedication that they give. A few things that we do. Recently, you may remember we had election, last week? And in Bonneville County, every seat was filled with a Republican. In our legislative districts, of which we have, I believe, 9 seats, every seat was filled by a Republican affiliated voter or a candidate. And statewide as well, every one of the statewide constitutional elected offices was filled with a Republican. It's been a clean sweep, and that doesn't happen by accident. That takes a lot of work. The result of that as well is that in those seats, we were able to keep radical liberal Democrats out of those seats, out of the seats of power, out of positions where they can have an effect over our liberties. The Republican Party in Bonneville County sponsors a free Constitution Day annually for both kids and adults. It was a great success. Well, you see some pictures of it there. It was a great success. We held it at Freeman Park this year on Constitution Day, and was well attended. The Central Committee helps to lead the way on issues in the state. In fact, our committee has authored and passed 2 recent resolutions on the sanctity of life, both for protection of the mother and for the child. We have, I suppose, famous for some hugely successful Lincoln Day banquets. In Bonneville County, we've had some huge Lincoln Days, and takes a ton of work to put those on, but we've been very successful. We've had Candace Owens, David Barton, Dinesh D'Souza, James O'Keefe, and Judge Eni, among others. Had some great speakers there, and encouraged a lot of enthusiasm in the community. We usually host a float on the 4th of July, and generally we hand out Constitution pamphlets at that float, not by the hundreds, but by the thousands. The Bonneville County Central Committee also contributes both financially and substantively to the state party organization. We help to write the platform. We pay our annual quota, which many counties in the state don't, but we contribute our quota that's assessed, and we fill every delegate seat when we have conventions. As the chairman I'm responsible to do training with new precinct officers. And my first question is always, why do you volunteer? And without exception, every single person I've asked that question to has answered the same. Again, none of them answer for the benefits or the paycheck. Every single person that's answered that question because they want to make a difference. They want to push the envelope. They want to move the needle. They want to improve our community. So again, the Republican Party is an actual organization. Without an actual organization by volunteers, there wouldn't be a party. There wouldn't be a written platform to which candidates that were running for office could rally around, and to which voters could recognize. Sometimes there's a false narrative that the party requires 100% adherence or fealty to every word of the platform. And, I'm here to tell you, I don't agree with every comma or every phrase or every strategy that's laid out in the Republican Party platform. But I do recognize it as a standard. It is the standard by which the party, the organization, and the voters judge candidates that wish to affiliate that way. It is the work of many different people that comes together. Without a written platform, what would the word Republican mean? It would be defined, I suppose, by just politicians that affiliate that way, and that would be kind of a nebulous term. So the question is, is the word Republican, is it a nebulous term, or is it a standard erected by voters to which voters and candidates rally around? I think the answer is kind of obvious there. Critics of the Republican Party and, Democrats or others who are seeking to undermine it are sometimes, I suppose, secretive about how they go about things. But the party itself tries to be as transparent as it can. The Republican Party in our county, the committee holds a meeting once a month. That meeting is open to the public. It's a business meeting, so the officers are voting and debating and so on and so forth, but it is open to public, and anybody that wants to come view the voting and the minutes and the debates can come view those. We welcome visitors. You can also see the resolutions that are passed and published, initiatives that the party takes. Recently, you'll see, if you go to our website, that we're starting to put local government reports. We're doing a lot more work on studying up on local government entities and seeking to inform our neighbors in the community about those. I'd encourage everyone to go there. The website's right behind me. So BonnevilleGOP.com. The committee, as all committees, it makes decisions on its as a committee does, via vote. And I think sometimes we're all guilty of wanting an organization to do exactly what we want. Even I, as chairman, sometimes would like the committee or the party to go a certain direction or make a certain decision. Sometimes I get outvoted. I got outvoted the other night. I made a determination, and the committee challenged the chair and almost unanimously said, "You're wrong." I said, "Okay." That's the way committees work, though. We're all guilty of that, I think, sometimes, of wanting organizations to mirror us and to do exactly what we would understand. Going into that, I guess critics, I'd like to go over some narratives that I think have been maybe inaccurate or uninformed in our community. Going back to some of the things that happened earlier this year. The first, I would say that bylaws were not broken. Bylaws are not laws, but they are rules made by a committee that apply only to a committee. They can be changed at any time by a majority vote. In Bonneville County, our bylaws don't make any mention of donations. I could ask here, maybe rhetorically, but who's donated to the Republican Party? Many of us have. Who has read the bylaws? Let me tell you, they're fun reading. I would sort of challenge anyone to say that they had read the bylaws and had seen those bylaws as an invitation to donate with a specific cause, because I don't see that in there. But the committee, many central committees in Bonneville, in the state of Idaho, have made donations to candidates in the past. I think there's a list there that'll flip through there. You'll see there that maybe I can't read them all, but Bonneville County has made some donations to candidates. Elmore County, Lewis County, Kootenai, Custer County, Bonner County, Clearwater, Twin Falls. These are donations made to candidates. The committee in Bonneville decided many months ago that they would there was a motion made to donate to some candidates, mainly some underdogs who would have trouble being able to campaign without a little bit of money. I was there again, so I can tell you firsthand that there was debate on that topic. In the committee, it was discussed and debated whether or not the funds should be donated to some candidates. That committee was aware of our bylaws and aware that in our bylaws there is, in the preamble, a comment about not taking a position against any candidate or in favor of any candidate. That was discussed and understood. And the committee decided and understood that a donation is not necessarily the same thing as an endorsement. And I think that's accurate. If I were to, say, lose a bet and donate to a candidate, that wouldn't necessarily be an endorsement of that candidate. The committee made their decisions, and for some reason, our county in Bonneville came under some pretty intense fire at this time. None of these other counties that had made donations that I'm aware of came under fire. I believe it started actually a friend of mine who was a candidate for office in North Idaho. He was a lawyer, and he dug into things and wrote an article or a letter about our bylaws, which, not being a member of Bonneville County, the bylaws don't necessarily apply to him, but he brought that question up. And I think, unfortunately, I think people took it and ran with it. And it kind of turned into a little bit more than maybe it needed to be. And eventually the state party chairman issued a letter publicly. He issued a letter to the news, which was odd, but in that letter, he denounced the donations that had been made, but he recommended a solution. One of the solutions he recommended was that Bonneville County clarify and fix its bylaws. Bonneville County Central Committee did that in the next meeting, clarified their bylaws. Another maybe misconception is that candidates somehow recommended themselves in Bonneville County. If you attend a meeting or ask a member of the committee about that, I think that myth can be pretty quickly dispelled. But I would say one role of a political party is to get good candidates. You know, another rhetorical question. Most of us, I would say, probably are not always fully satisfied with the candidates that we have available to us on the ballot. We'd like better candidates, right? If you turn on the news recently, you'll see that the red wave kind of fizzled more than anticipated. And every commentator on the news will tell you that's because we didn't have good enough candidates. That's a struggle. It's a challenge. It's something that the Bonneville County Republican Party and others constantly face to try and get the best candidates we can onto the ballot. Whether it's McCain or Romney or Trump, we're not always ever perfectly happy with every candidate we have option, and we want better ones. That's one of the reasons why you often see at conventions and other places, you see straw polls. Here, a couple examples here. Bernie Sanders won a straw poll of the Progressive Caucus, I think. And Donald Trump won a straw poll at the CPAC. You see these also at conventions of Democrat and Republican parties across the state. And the purpose of that sort of a straw poll, obviously no one's elected by a straw poll, but it informs the public of what the party faithful think of the potential candidates. That's a good bit of information to people sometimes. This year in Idaho was a really big election. There was a number of counties across Idaho voiced their opinions about the quality of the different candidates that were coming up for election in the primary. I think this is Adams County. This is a Democrat Party in Cook County, Illinois, so I'll probably avoid every one of those candidates. But the Kootenai County, I believe, did one. Ada County issued a sample ballot. Here it was at the general election, but it's kind of somewhat common. And as I said, this year in Idaho, there was $15 million spent on campaigning during the Republican primary. In fact, there were groups all across Idaho, many of which were not, you would say, affiliated with the Republican Party or leaning that way, that issued voter guides or endorsements or recommendations. There were some almost to the point that the Democrat Party, I almost expected to see issuing endorsements or recommendations on who to vote for in the Republican Party primary. Seeing that all the activity, Bonneville County wanted to participate as well and advise voters. As a volunteer, I can tell you, every election season comes up, I get multiple phone calls from friends and neighbors wanting to know about the candidates on the ballot. Now, personally, I usually tell them what I know about those candidates, the pros and cons. I don't tell them you have to vote for this person, but I tell them what I know about them. And I tell them which one I think might represent the Republican Party best or which one might advance certain principles best. And they make their own decisions based on that information. The party volunteers, and that's I suppose, as a volunteer for the Republican Party and as a precinct officer, that's a responsibility. As a precinct officer in your neighborhood, you would be responsible to be able to answer those kind of questions. So in Bonneville County, we put together a committee, and I'm very proud of the hard work that this committee did. It ended up being 22 people on this committee, and less than half of them were precinct officers or members of the Republican Party organization. Well, that committee invited every candidate on the ballot to answer a questionnaire, invited them to interviews, studied their donations, and they went into it with no predetermined favorites. But that committee dedicated, we calculated 700 man hours towards reviewing questions and answers and interviews and voting records for incumbents. All told, it was 27 committee members for 57 candidates that were on our ballot in Bonneville County. And they studied 27 different metrics for each candidate. Some of those are just, a question. I know these numbers because I know the guy who had to compile all the spreadsheets. If you multiply that all out, that's 33,858 individual data points that the committee gathered on all these candidates. That committee, for candidate committee, then reported back to the Republican Party their findings and what they had learned about the candidates. And the Republican Party Central Committee then conducted a vote via secret ballot, actually, of which candidates the committee felt that they would recommend as good candidates to support the Republican Party platform. And they in some races there were almost two that won. In other races there were none that received a recommendation of the committee, but ended up with a list of candidates that were going to be on the ballot that the Republican Party Central Committee wanted to recommend. And the Bonneville County Republican Party then issued a flyer sent out about those. Again, this flyer doesn't tell anyone how they have to vote, but it tells people what the party faithful and the volunteers thought about the various candidates on the ballot, or which ones they thought were best to recommend. I can't tell you how many people thanked us for the work that was put in. There was a lot of work put in this. In fact, I don't know if Kirk Papke here? Stand up, Kirk. Kurt spent tons and tons of hours reviewing details of candidates, reviewing their answers to questions, gathering information about them, about who was sponsoring their campaigns, about where they stood on issues, about their voting records. And he's one of 22 members on that committee that dedicated about a month's worth of work towards learning about these candidates. The average voter does not have time to do that. I know of among my friends and neighbors, very few have the time and ambition to study each candidate individually and do that. And so there were a lot of thank yous for the work that had been done. Some critics too, but excuse me. Jumping to the next. I've heard a lot that people say that the Bonneville County Central Committee attacked candidates. And I want to say clearly that the Bonneville County Republican Party did not attack any candidates. I was co-chair on the candidate committee. And when we reached out to candidates, we thanked them all for their willingness to run for office. It takes a lot of bravery. We thanked them all. We asked them to respond back to us, to answer questionnaires, to meet with us, to interview with us, to give us information about their candidacy. And they responded to varying degrees. But individuals in the world of politics, I think, as we all know, trade barbs back and forth. Some people call each other rhinos. Some people call each other extremists. And frankly, we should do better. I sort of take a little bit of pride in, I got called a communist and an anarchist once in the same day. My communist friend called me an anarchist, and my anarchist friend called me a communist. We should do better. Make no mistake about it. But as an organization, the Republican Party doesn't attack candidates. It doesn't call candidates rhinos. Like I say, I've been called things in the newspaper, and it does happen. I understand that, and we should do better. But it is not an attack when someone recommends a candidate that is not you for an office. In fact, that's a tough decision, a tough situation sometimes. We've had, even in recent elections, there's been some races where I knew both candidates, considered both candidates friends, and had to make a decision which of these candidates I would support, which I thought would do the best job, and had to share with my friends how I felt about that. But that's important. That has to happen because those candidates will have an impact on my children, on me, on my freedom, on our community. And so those tough conversations sometimes have to happen, those tough, candid conversations. That is not an attack when we choose a best candidate or a best option. Another topic, going back to the lawsuit, there's been talk that the lawsuit was unavoidable, and also that it was communicated to the volunteers in the Bonneville County. I'd go into that a little bit. The prior question about donations was long since passed by the time that the lawsuit was filed. The state party chairman, I can tell you, did not speak to Bonneville's Central Committee, didn't call our chairman at the time, and in fact, didn't speak with his own executive committee on the state level. The state party chairman had never attended a regular meeting in Bonneville County, and again, didn't call our chairman to dialogue before filing the lawsuit. He did apparently communicate with certain candidates. We had a situation where candidates had received his letter that he had issued in condemnation of Bonneville County before the press and before we did. As far as I know, the state party chairman spoke to only one GOP figure in our county who was actually not a member of the Central Committee at the time. I should say two, actually. I spoke with the chairman, the state party chairman, 2 days before the lawsuit was filed. I was actually in the hospital. My wife had given birth to our fourth kid. And while we were there and recovering and I had nothing to do, I looked at the news and, or my emails, I suppose, and saw that there was a letter being issued in condemnation of the Bonneville County Republican Party. So I called the state party chairman I don't think he recognized my cell number. He picked up and answered, and I talked to him for a little while. And I pled with him to not do this. I told him of all the hard work we had done, of how we had tried to do things the right way, of how we were trying to do our job as party volunteers to learn about candidates and to communicate with voters about potential candidates. I was unpersuasive, I suppose. And 2 days later, we received that lawsuit. It kind of blindsided everyone because there had been no mention that I'm aware of that a lawsuit was going to be filed. When the lawsuit was filed, it followed a pattern as well. It went straight to the press. The former state party chairman kind of had a habit of doing that, of sending letters or lawsuits to the press rather than reaching out directly to the volunteers. It's kind of a sad situation. The narrative about the lawsuit that was filed towards Bonneville County, it shifted over time. The first talk about the lawsuit was it was claimed that the lawsuit was filed because Bonneville County had been intentionally deceptive about the flyer that they issued. You see here, this is the back of the flyer. There was a claim that the Bonneville County Republican Party had tried to impersonate the state party because we use the word official. You'll notice it says Bonneville. It has the Bonneville website, Bonneville phone number, Bonneville logo on the back, Bonneville QR code, and also the legislative district in Bonneville. I think that can be pretty quickly explained, and apparently the Idaho Secretary of State agreed. The Idaho Secretary of State, after there was a complaint filed to them. You probably can't read that. I'm sorry, it's too fuzzy. I'll read you the words though. The Secretary of State's office said, "We believe that it is clear that the party responsible for these mailings is in fact the Bonneville Republican Party, and no other entity is named on the mailing, and all other contact information provided guides recipients to that conclusion." So the flyer that Bonneville issued was not an impersonation or dishonest, deceptive implication that it was speaking for the state party. In fact, the word state, and I don't think even Idaho appears on the flyer that was issued by the Central Committee in Bonneville. So the narrative shifted away from that after a quick look at the flyer and seeing how many times it said Bonneville. The narrative shifted to the lawsuit was necessary because counties are not allowed to speak up about candidates during the primaries. I think the former state party chairman hadn't read his own rules for the state party, because the rules for the Idaho Republican Party on the state level say that a county central committee may determine the political affiliation of candidates filing or declaring an intent to file as Republican candidates for county political offices and may endorse Republican candidates for their respective positions. The next paragraph in the state party rule says the same thing about legislative districts, of which we have two in Bonneville County. So that didn't really stick. So then there was a claim that the Bonneville County Republican Party had violated numerous state election laws. And you saw in that other slide there that the Idaho Secretary of State's office said that that was not the case. Finally, the fourth claim, as the narrative shifted, claimed to that the lawsuit was necessary because Bonneville County had violated federal election laws. As it turns out on that flyer, there are two of the, I'm not sure how many, 24 candidates that are for federal office. And because there are two candidates that are running for federal office in that flyer, technically federal election laws apply to that. In that case, federal election laws require that a flyer say the words paid for by. And it does not say that word paid for by. So again, the lawsuit was filed on May 12th. And the narrative shifted about the lawsuit and the reasons for that lawsuit. On July 11th and July 15th, two people from the community here in Bonneville County, who are both registered Republicans, filed official FEC complaints against that flyer that Bonneville had put out. I won't speak to their motivation, but I really struggle to understand how anyone is harmed by a flyer that goes out from their own party that doesn't say the word paid for by. So those complaints were filed, and the FEC takes months and sometimes years to respond to those. So there's not been a resolution to that. But I don't think we can say that this lawsuit was filed on May 12th because of complaints that were filed the day before the state convention when the former chairman was running for re-election. One or two more here. I've got the lawsuit against Bonneville County was not ruled on by a judge. The merits of this lawsuit were actually never heard. There was a preliminary hearing held the day after the lawsuit was filed, in which the judge, it was actually a temporary visiting judge in Ada County, directed that Bonneville County shouldn't send out any more flyers, which the volunteers did not. It was 2 days before the election. The flyers had already been mailed. No more were distributed. But the merits of the lawsuit were never heard. The news published articles that said Bonneville County Republican Party has been ruled against and is guilty and wrong. And the news, as they sometimes do, missed that story. One other thing, the dismissal of the lawsuit, that happened after the state party convention. In the state convention, every 2 years, the Republican Party gets together, for those who are not familiar, and every county sends delegates. And together, there's over 700 of them, and they get together. It rotates around the state. This year was in Twin Falls. At that state convention, it's actually a great experience. If you've never been, you should look for an opportunity to serve as a delegate to state convention. It is a great opportunity to rub shoulders with patriots from all across the state. At our state convention this year, which was July 20th, I believe, the chairman's opening remarks were about the lawsuit that he had filed against one of his counties. He spoke about that lawsuit multiple times, and his closing remarks were akin to an apology. He said there may have been mistakes made. Let's work together. The delegates there, it was the topic of that convention. It was discussed everywhere, in all across the campus at College of Southern Idaho, amongst the delegates there, and the vote was overwhelming. In the end, the delegates decided to give a chance for new leadership across the state. There were 721 delegates there, and the vote was 434 to 287. As the convention closed, the former chairman said the lawsuit was over as far as he was concerned, and the new chairwoman who was elected about a month later, after procedures have been followed, the lawsuit was dismissed, and the volunteers from Bonneville County, couldn't be more glad about that. The state convention was a huge success for grassroots and for conservatism and for the party as a whole. It really energized the entire party. And much of the state rallied around Bonneville. In fact, you see a picture here. Bonneville had an open house, and it was standing room only. I can tell you that that there were several text groups and so on and so forth, and I know volunteers from all across the state were just completely buzzing after the convention, excited to move forward, be able to advance conservatism, and to be able to work toward a common cause. I would say infighting and arguing amongst conservatives and Republicans is counterproductive. There are always some of us that want to argue to no end. If you're involved in the world of politics, you probably like to argue about politics. I think we all do. It's hard to get meetings short. In fact, I'm probably over already. But I've encouraged the members of the Bonneville County Central Committee, as well as Stand Up for Idaho, to avoid letting that happen, to avoid letting never-ending arguments continue. Instead, I would say come and see. Come and see, come and see. A first-hand perspective is always a better situation. At our the last meeting here, there was, I think, over 200 people, and there was a lot of interest in the Republican Party. Most of them I didn't recognize faces, and I would encourage everyone to come visit a Republican Party Central Committee meeting, or better yet, to reach out to their local precinct officer or someone else. If we allow rumors and innuendo and hearsay to inform our opinions, we all understand that that can be damaging to those around us, whether we're giving or receiving of that. None of us are immune from that. And again, we have to do better. I see the same thing actually in my church. In my church, some of the former members are known to be the most vicious critics. And in church, they're always constantly talking about, if you would like to know about the doctrine or about the church, it's best to reach out directly to the church, not to the critics or to the anti-members of that church. And that applies to all walks of life, I think. Criticism of the Republican Party is probably never going to stop. There are Democrats and liberals out there that are critical of the Republican Party. And sometimes there are others with agendas that want to work together with those. Sometimes they form an unholy alliance, if you will, against those volunteers trying to advance the cause. I would say also, it's not right to demonize others. We have political differences and personality conflicts and feuds sometimes. And when we demonize people, it ends up hurting people on all sides. And that applies to all sides as well. Within the Republican Party, none of our volunteers are perfect people. I'm certainly not. That's not why we donate our time and efforts and money to the Republican Party, though. I don't participate in the Republican Party so I can rub shoulders with people who are perfect or people who agree completely with me. I participate in the Republican Party so that I can advance the principles that I believe in, the principles that will make a better world, that are more free. The Bonneville County, as a committee, the Bonneville County Central Committee is not perfect either. They make decisions as a committee by popular vote and do the best they can. And I would say it's not right to blame individuals for the decisions of a committee. All too often, certain people end up taking all the slings and arrows of the detractors, and we have a tendency to try to make people into boogeymen if we don't agree with them. I've been asked to throw people under the bus sometimes, and I will not do that. I consider every member of the Bonneville County Central Committee a friend. We all have flaws, but I admire the dedication shown by every member of the Republican Party team. When we take criticism and continue to fight for what we believe is right is when character shows. And the courage shown by the Republican Central Committee, in my opinion, is spectacular. Most people back down or walk away when they're criticized or when they end up being in the spotlight. But our society doesn't work well if good people don't stand up and show courage and stand for their beliefs. This community, Bonneville County, our community, it must do better. And I think we can. I would encourage, again, if you care about Republican ideals or the principles that are laid out in the Republican platform, I'd encourage everyone to volunteer, to participate. In our county, we have a number of different subcommittees focusing on a bunch of different aspects in our local government and our community. There's places for people to serve. There's initiatives that we're working on. There's always something to be done and accomplished. I'd ask one more time, maybe the volunteers, those who have volunteered to participate in the Republican Party, if you could stand. Every one of these people has donated an incredible amount of time and energy and money and passion toward the Republican Party and the principles that we hold dear. And I could not be more proud of this group of people. They are doing great work and they deserve an applause. Going beyond the volunteers for the Republican Party, Bonneville County in general is a great community. Idaho in general is a great state. It's why I choose to live here, why I choose to raise my kids here. You know, I work in construction, and sometimes I deal with a lot of frustrating individuals there sometimes too. I was on a job site the other day, and I wanted to fire every one of them. But as I was talking to someone else there, we realized, you know, we can't build this building if we don't have tile setters and roofers and masons and excavators and pavers and painters and drywallers, all the trades that most of the time are a pain in my neck. But we can't build a building without them. The same applies in our community. None of us are perfect. We're all abrasive to each other. We all struggle sometimes, but we cannot build a great community without each other, without working together. In Bonneville County, overwhelmingly, the people support conservative ideas. The majority of Republican or conservative voters in Bonneville County is a super majority. It's overwhelming. The people in our community, in our county, support traditional family values, lower taxes, smaller government, more freedom. Most of us all agree on that. There's a small minority, I suppose, that doesn't. But if we can do a better job of coming together, I don't think there's a limit to what we can do in our county. We can make a huge difference. We can improve our community. We can improve our level of freedom. Freedom, as they say, isn't free. It requires hard work. That hard work sometimes is tough debates. Sometimes it's face-to-face conversations, unpleasant discussions. We have to work through these things. If we do, we can do a better job. We can make a difference. And I believe we have a moral obligation to do so, to do that tough work. Your children and mine are counting on us. Their future liberty literally depends on us being able to work through the tough things, put aside our petty differences, and make decisions that will advance their freedom. And that's my call, I suppose, tonight, that we do that we do a better job of that, and that we work towards our common goals. I'd say may God bless America and may God bless Bonneville County. I almost forgot here, but if you have questions, again, I would say come and see. I would encourage people to go to the website, BonnevilleGOP.com. There are our names and pictures and faces are there. Come to one of our monthly meetings. We meet the second Thursday every month here at the Shiloh at 7:00. Also, please talk with one of the volunteers that are here tonight. We're fairly early still, I think, and I would encourage people to mingle and talk and learn from one another, and hopefully get in touch with your neighborhood precinct officer. We want every precinct officer in every neighborhood to know all their neighbors and to be able to talk and be the point of contact for information about the Republican Party, about candidates in the Republican Party. And again, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Good job. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Nick. Very good. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Nick for what he did. Thank Frank, he's here. for his input. You know, the key here is, as a community, we have to talk. No matter what side we're on, and I extend this to, you know, whether you're Republican, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a libertarian, a constitutionalist, we need to talk, because we as a society make up this world. We as a society make up this country, and we have to learn to live together and to achieve the things that are good for us, good for our children, because those are the ones that matter. And with that, I'd like to, if anybody has any, views or whatnot that they want to talk about, that's what Stand Up for Idaho is all about. We are nonpartisan. Yeah, we're conservative, but we do invite the conversation from all, because we need to understand each other. Like I said in the beginning, we need to understand everybody's point of view so that we can collectively make the right decisions, you know, for us, our community, and our country. And with that, you know, and I'll just be honest, be frank, I always am, you know, is I've really encouraged the Democratic Party to come and talk to us. And we've had one candidate that actually did come and talk while she was campaigning. But I really encourage us all, because we live in this world together. And we have to somehow continue to live in this world together and not fight. That's not what we want. That's not what Republicans want. I don't believe that's what Democrats want. As individuals, we want to live in peace. And so I truly encourage everybody to have civil discourse, talk to each other, talk to your neighbors. The First Amendment gives us that right. Well, we have that right. The First Amendment protects that. Okay, let's have the discussion. Let's have the civil discussion. And in the end, I know collectively we'll come to the right decision. With that, we're going to get out of here early, and I'm going to thank Nick for that. But again, I think he did a good job. And if anybody out there listening wants to come and talk to Stand Up for Idaho, please get a hold of me. Get a hold of the website, standupforidaho.org, and we will get you here, because it is important that we all learn and talk and live together. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe time going home. Thank you very much.